listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11, Monday through Friday. Steve Moore and Art Laffer have a new book called Return to Prosperity, and we appreciate you being with us today, Steve. How are you?
Well, good morning, Martha, and I have a press release for you this morning. We actually, Laffer and I have a new book literally coming out in a week, and the title of that book is called The Trump Economic Miracle.
Thank you. I looked at the wrong book. I apologize.
That's okay. But anyway, so that's going to be available starting next week. People can go to Amazon and get it either online or order it. It's something you can read or 2 or 3, 4 nights, and it'll really help people. It'll clarify what's really going on with the economic situation. I mean, we've seen such a fall from grace in terms of our economy since when Trump was in office. And let's not forget we had the best economy ever when Trump was president. And now it's almost this fable that somehow Biden and Harris have rescued the economy. I don't see how, 10 million illegal immigrants in the country. I don't know how 25% increase in prices. I don't know how real income losses for the average American. I don't know how anybody could say that's rebuilding the economy, but we expose a lot of those myths and really make the economic case for why it's so important that Trump win this race.
So I know you and I have both shared concerns over the last couple of years about, how President Trump is going to bring in the people that are undecided. And, he loves having the rallies, and those are true believers, and he needs to do that for a lot of reasons. But I see a little shift in what he's doing, and we're seeing it with things that J.D. Vance is doing. Are you seeing what you need to see to bring other voters in?
Look, I think it's really interesting. Right now, it's basically exactly tied, this race. And you've got states like Georgia and Arizona and Michigan and Pennsylvania and a few others that are exactly tied. I don't know what the latest is there in Georgia. But, it's going to be close in all those states. And I agree with you. I think Trump needs to do more. I'm going to go see the president in a couple of days to reach out to these undecided voters. Now, a lot of them are women, as you know. And Trump can't win this election if he's got this massive gender gap problem. That if that persists, I think he's in some trouble. But I think he's got to make the case. Look, women are the ones, Martha, as you know, are the ones who are primarily dealing with the kitchen table issues, the pocketbook issues. That they're the ones that oftentimes in households pay the bills. So they see the financial stress that their family and others are under. So I think that's the case Trump needs to make.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the Gutfeld appearance last week. He was great. He was relaxed. He was funny. I don't know if you remember, I know you remember when Bob Dole ran for president. And Bob Dole had a great sense of humor. But for whatever reason, his handlers didn't let him show it.
Yeah.
And he was on the Letterman show right after the election, and I was like, where was this guy? Where was this guy? And so I think that's what we need to see more of. I think that's what people, because if you listen to the people that are undecided, they are more emotional voters, okay? And they're going to vote on who they like. And I hate to say it, but it's true.
No, it's absolutely true. In fact, every election since 1980, the winner of the race has been the candidate who the American people like more. And it turned out the reason that, Trump won in 2016, you had two candidates that a lot of Americans didn't like, but it turns out they didn't like Hillary more than they didn't like Trump. And look, Kamala Harris is not a likable person. She's a phony. I hope Americans can see through that. And she's ruthlessly ambitious. The people I know who know her personally know that she's not she's not a good person. But look, Trump has his flaws too. But I agree with you entirely. I think Trump needs to show his kind of lighter side, and he has. I've been at dinners with him, small dinners and large dinners, where he can be so funny. And I'd like to see him be a little self-effacing and self-deprecating. Sometimes a little modesty. I don't know if that word goes with Trump, but all those things I think you're right are important.
Well, I mean, like yesterday in North Carolina, he came to the rally with his grandchildren. I love those pictures with him and his grandchildren.
Right.
You know, you can just see in his face a different side of him. And I think, you know, you're dealing with I think people that are making their mind up on a more emotional level, because if you're making your mind up on an ideological level, you've already done it. Okay?
I agree with that.
You know, so anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got 1/3 of Americans who are, you know, hardcore leftists, and then you have people like me on the other side who are, you know, staunch conservative, free market people. But then you have about 25 or 30% in the middle who really swing the elections. And, you know, the reason we wrote this book is if you're voting on something like abortion, you know, I can't talk about that. That's not my issue. But anyone who cares about the economic future of our country and their wallets and whether they can afford to send their kids to school or take a vacation or pay their bills, I mean, it's no question. I mean, Trump is far, far superior to anything that has happened under Biden and Harris. And let's face it, you know, what Kamala Harris is basically saying is, I'm going to give you 4 more years. And if Americans really want 4 more years of this, they probably should vote for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really it. And then you heard Tim Walz, which I know he didn't mean it the way it came out, but it was like, we can't have 4 more years of this. And I know he was talking about Trump, but what it looked like was we can't have 4 more years of Biden. And then you got Joe Biden, where Jill Biden's doing the cabinet meeting, and he had this faux pas at this meeting with the Indian prime minister. I mean, I just hope and pray nothing really bad happens between now and January.
You know, this is a really important point you're making. I mean, I was so shocked when I saw the footage of that, basically Joe Biden running the cabinet meeting. I mean, that's frightening, folks. I mean, Joe Biden doesn't know anything about policy. And look, is it what the 22nd Amendment? I get these amendments, you know, mixed up. But
25th Amendment.
25th. You know, if a president becomes incapacitated, and by the way, you could make the case that he's been incapacitated for the last couple of years. You know, he needs to be removed. Now, I'm not saying that he should be. I'm saying he might need to be, given what's happened in just recent weeks. And Kamala Harris, by the way, openly, here's something for people to consider if you're an undecided voter listening to the show. Kamala Harris blatantly lied to the American people for many, many months, telling Americans that Joe Biden was in good health, and he wasn't. And everybody knew it. Everywhere around him knew it. Why would she lie to the American people about that?
Yeah, I mean, and just to keep saying he's the best, he's the sharpest. Oh, you don't know the Joe I know. I mean, we heard that from her. We heard it from Nancy Pelosi. We heard it from Schumer. You know, I just wanted to be in one of those closed-door meetings so I could see what they saw, because it wasn't happening, right? Nobody was seeing this. And then you've got Peter Doocy out there, who is the only one of the press. Well, some of the press is starting to push back now because they don't like the fact that she's not doing interviews. Yeah. But, you know, if she can't do an interview without a teleprompter, you know, what's the issue there?
So one last thing, and then I got to run, Martha. I think you're exactly right again. But at this point I want to make, I do think it's important. I'd love your reaction to this. I think it's really important that Trump get on the stage again with Kamala Harris. He can do better than he did in that last debate. And he's got to, I mean, there's so many things that need to be brought out about Kamala Harris that didn't come up in that debate. So I saw him in his first debate against Hillary Clinton. He was a disaster, and then he came back and was much, much better in the second and third debates. I just want to see it happen. I know Trump is saying that it's too late, but it's not too late. Most Americans a lot of Americans who still haven't made up their mind. But what say you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's got to be before October 23rd, though, because you're going to have about 30% of the country will have already voted by then because of early voting. So right. I think it ought to be early in October. But, yeah, I think they should get together again.
Yep, I agree. Right. And I know Trump can develop, you know, look, he's got the argument on his side. He has to stop the insults and just stick with the facts.
Stick with the facts. Just the facts, ma'am. Steve Moore, thanks so much. Tell folks the name of the book again.
Easy to remember. It's called The Trump Economic Miracle. And by the way, do you know who came up with that title?
President Trump. I saw you do an interview on this.
Right.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. It's always great to talk to you.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
It is the Martha Zoller Show. I'm here with Joni Alpert, and it is, The Rock had the football team down to his movie set for Appalachia, and also that he's going to come to their first home game, wow. I think is what he said, and that's great. Exciting. Look, this is a horrible, horrible situation, but the way that the community has responded in the way they can. Everybody can't help in the same way anybody else can. Do you know what I mean? But they're helping in the way that they can. Joining me right now is Senator Jason Anavitarte, who is been working on a bill called Alyssa's bill, and it has to do with school safety and that kind of thing. And we wanted to talk a little bit about it today. Jason, welcome back to the program. How are you?
Good morning, Martha. It's great to be back.
So tell us about Alyssa's bill.
Yeah, so Alyssa's law we introduced 2 years ago, and it was named after a victim that tragically was killed in the Parkland shooting in Florida. And one of the findings from state leaders and others, lessons learned from that shooting, was that if there was an alert system of some sort that allowed law enforcement, teachers inside the building, staff, janitorial folks or whatever, to communicate through one, single form of communication when there's a crisis, a health crisis, or God forbid a shooting, this alert system would instantaneously alert public safety officials to act. And so our bill in Georgia would basically do that. We actually have this technology in the state capitol building, and I know in Paulding County, Georgia, we utilize this technology. Even our bus drivers use this technology. So we believe that every single school district, all 180 school districts in Georgia, should deploy this technology as part of their security apparatus in their school districts.
When I worked for the Senate office for Senator Perdue, we had one of each of our offices, as well as the front desk, had one of those buttons too, where it was a panic button basically. It immediately alerted Atlanta Police Department. And, it was an important, it saved time. That's what we're talking about here, is saving minutes, because minutes save lives.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, this technology, unfortunately, it would not have saved the lives of, the tragic situation in Bartow County, but it allowed folks to, public safety, the sheriff's office, school resource officers in particular, to act very quickly to get to other students and kind of pin down where the situation is on campus. There's many ways to design this technology, and how it's deployed, but Bartow County, basically deployed it, as perfectly as possible, and those school resource officers are heroes in what they did to save additional teachers and students from the tragedy.
You mentioned that this was named after Alyssa, a girl that died in the Parkland shooting. And, Parkland was not that different than what we dealt with here in Appalachia, in that the Parkland shooting was a young man who was in foster care, and his foster mother had passed away the month before. He called to get some help. He was over 18 at the time, and basically there was no help for him. That has changed. It's changed in Georgia, and it's changed in Florida, to where there are more services for foster kids past 18. I'm not blaming the system, but there were warning signs, and the state didn't pick up on it in the case of Parkland. And we had situations here, not the state necessarily, but the FBI talked to this guy a year ago. And so we've got to do a better job. We just had the anniversary of 9/11, Jason, and remember all the talk at that time about, the wall between these agencies. We've got to tear down those walls, where agencies and people that have the best interest of our kids at heart can communicate with each other more effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the culture changes we have seen since 9/11 and as the dynamic and culture, of our society has changed, and we see just the dynamics. My wife's a high school teacher, so we live it every single day in terms of, what's going on in the classroom, what's going on in the hallway. And I grew up in an environment where there were gangs all around us, and, sadly back in, the early 2000s or in the 1990s, we were used to having, guns and, bad stuff around us. But today, in this society, when you factor in social media, one of the things, we banned this past year in schools, which, contributes to bullying and other negative consequences for students in the classroom. We think that, there needs to be more consistency, I think, in terms of, what services are out there in terms of behavioral health services in the schools. And the more that a child and parent can get connected to, like Northeast Georgia Health System or, their primary care provider, when there's, issues going on in the home and are able to connect themselves to healthcare, those are the models, we need to think about. I don't know what the right, model is, because we also want to be sensitive too that we don't have organizations or folks kind of intruding our schools, giving healthcare advice. But I do think we need to make sure that when parents raise their hand and say, hey, I need help for my child, that they're able to do it and do it in a safe and secure manner as they feel is appropriate for their family. So I know my counties, they're totally two different. Polk County, we have that with a health system in our community, and our other one we don't necessarily. So I think there's some opportunities for discussion.
Well, in Hall County here, Will Schofield's put together a program that he's not only rolled out here in Hall County, but he's starting to multiply it around, because he makes the point, and it's true, we know who our school shooters are. They are students, they are teachers, they are people that work for the school. Okay, if you look at it all across the country, these are not strangers that walk in. They have some connection to the school. Mm-hmm. And what he's done is from bus drivers to students to teachers to receptionists have been taught this way to de-escalate conversations and how to do that. And they've had a dramatic reduction in incidences in Hall County. Because you don't want to just stop the shootings, right? You want to stop all the stuff that might lead up to that. And
that's a bigger culture.
That's a bigger culture change. And so I think we have got a lot of good ideas around this state. And I'm excited that this bill people are going to take more seriously in the next legislative session, but also that we have more opportunities.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I think the conversation should be positive. I will say that, and I think this, I'm a pretty ardent supporter of the Second Amendment, so I think those that are, coming around and saying that, we need gun control and all these kinds of things. Gun control and more laws would have not changed this tragic situation. No. We have laws on the books from the federal government. We have laws in the state of Georgia. I think the Governor Kemp, Attorney General Carr have done a great job in terms of even updating some of our laws. And then Lieutenant Governor and I just literally updated our bullying statutes that haven't been updated in over a decade. So I think we've modernized a lot of kind of the basic blocking and tackling bills that, we use in the schools. I'm sure there are others we need to look at. But I think at the end of the day, this is all about personal and parent responsibility in terms of what's happening in our schools. And I think and as we see the erosion of that, and we see prosecutors like in Athens, Clark County that don't want to enforce the law, we're going to see that erosion continue in our communities and neighborhoods where things are happening.
Well, Jason Anavitarte, thank you so much for being with me today, and we look forward to seeing this bill progress in the next legislative session.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you for all your support. God bless y'all.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
It is the Martha Zoller Show. I'm here with Shondell Summer, and we're also joined by Joseph Kirk, who is the head of the elections office at Bartow County, but also he has been involved in the election process for many years in lots of roles, and he's kind of my Martha Zoller Show expert on all of these rules, because last time we got together, Joseph, the state election board was talking about some rules to pass, and now they have passed some and not others. So I've got two real questions. One, what are the rules that they passed? What's the impact of them? I guess three questions. And was it something they should have done? So I would love for you to address those things.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you having me back. It's just a pleasure to be here. Let me work backwards. So as far as something they should have done, without getting into the policy decisions, one of the things that we as elected officials have asked for is a 90-day quiet period before a major election. You don't want to change the rules of the game once the game's already being played. And we're already issuing ballots at this point. And some of these rules won't go into effect until, I think it's October 10th. And that's after most folks have already gotten their absentee ballots. We're gearing up for advanced voting, poll worker training. It's just too late to be changing things around at this time, in my opinion. As far as what passed, it was a variety of things. There was a rule about hand counting ballots. There was a rule about reconciling results on election night for absentee ballots, so anything by mail or that was cast in person before election day. There were others that don't have as big of an impact, at least not to our operations, but say posting the number of ballots cast every day during advanced voting, in addition to how many voters were checked in. I think that adds to transparency, and while I wish I hadn't passed this close to the election, I like that idea. But, the rules I'm really concerned about, the two that I mentioned, that are, rules by hand counting ballots at polls on election night. If someone's not already aware, election officials already reconcile how many voters voted, how many ballots were cast. Every day, every election, every polling place has these procedures. So at best, this is just hand counting the number of ballots in the box is redundant. At worst, it's just giving folks an opportunity to make a mistake or possibly put the ballots at risk. I've seen folks talk about a bank as the example. They're going to reconcile the money at the bank. That's true. I've never walked into a bank and seen them have money spread around the room either, and little stacks of 50 to count it up for the day. We need to keep these things as safe as possible. Now, I don't think that the sky is falling. We're going to have successful elections. We're going to have accurate elections and transparent elections. But this is not an ideal situation for our poll workers. It's put a lot more pressure on them. The other one is, trying to reconcile numbers on election night. We can't close down our scanners till 7 p.m. That might take 20, 30 minutes in a big election. And then we have to report those results by 8 p.m. That was part of Senate Bill 189 during the last session. And one of the things I think the legislature made clear in the last session is they want results as fast as possible.
That's right.
So
because if you look, Joseph, let's just look at Florida, for example. Florida was a debacle in 2000, right? They had hanging chads. They had all kinds of problems. Now, a state of 25 million people, it may be more than that now, generally get their results out by about 9 or 9:30. Which is amazing, and it shows that they did the things they need to do to become more accurate and more efficient.
And the interesting thing down there is they're scanning ballots throughout the entire process. They have like a daily meeting. I've been to one once. So when I travel, I try to visit election offices and learn from different parts of the country. And it was amazing that they were there doing everything transparently in front of the public, getting stuff counted ahead of election day. So on election night, all they did was generate the results, and they were done.
So why can't we have that?
Well, we're working towards that. We don't just count ballots every day during the process here, but unlike 2020, we can start counting ballots before Election Day. And while that rule was in place for the 2020 general election, we weren't used to it. We never done it. But I can promise you none of us wants to be here late on election night. We are tired. We want to get some sleep. We're doing what we need to do to have results reported as fast as possible. Now, in larger areas, with ballots coming in at the last minute, that might push their results later. But I think if these rules stand, we're going to see later results in Georgia because there's be extra steps in the process before they can bring the results back to the office so we can report them to the public.
So just to be clear, are you saying that the rules were changed so that once they have a number and they've counted all the votes, they're going to take those ballots and literally get out and one for him, one for her, all night long? Is that what's going on?
Not hand count the results, just the number of ballots. They want us to confirm the number of ballots that are in the box matches the number of ballots that were scanned, number of people who were checked in. But the thing is, the scanner counts how many ballots it's accepted throughout the day, and there's an employee stationed by the scanner to keep an eye on that to make sure it's working properly and nobody scans something twice, things like that. You can't scan two pieces of paper in a scanner. That's part of the security of the system. So,
how long of a delay would that cause to go back and hand count?
It's going to depend on the polling place. Now, the rule does say if there's more than 750 ballots cast, the poll workers come in the next day to do it. But for some poll workers, it won't be possible.
So we wouldn't get the results till the next day?
No, they would seal them up, bring them back to the office, then come back the next day to the hand count. We'd release the results that night. Sorry, I was not clear about that. But a lawmaker have to stay and count no matter how many ballots were cast at that polling place because they don't have time the next day. So if it's a poll with, say, 200 ballots cast, a small poll, then probably not too long. If they've had thousands of ballots cast that day, which is possible in a lot of these polling places, it's going to take a little while. And it's hard to say how long it's going to take.
So do you think that do we have the issue? Because what they always bring up is, X county has, 500 registered voters and 600 people voted. Does that happen?
No. There have been issues in the past with how we've reported information to the public with credit for voting, but your credit for voting does not equate to your vote. So you can't go online and see if you voted. You can see if you got credit for voting on your voter registration record. You know your ballot was cast and counted because you scanned it yourself. But if there was a difference of 100, check-ins if there were 100 more ballots scanned than people checked in the poll, that would set off some alarm bells. We would be investigating that. Now, sometimes the numbers are one-off. Say somebody walks out with their ballot rather than scanning it. It happens. We expect to see small inconsistencies. But a factor of 100 would be a major issue.
A major issue. So are you ready? And did you have to redo training for your poll workers?
I tend to leave training till closer to the election. These folks are having a hard enough time drinking through a fire hose and trying to remember everything they need to learn to be a poll worker. I want them to have the best chance possible, so I do a lot of it during advanced voting. So mine starts next week. So I can still talk to them about it, but many counties are fully staffed, have been doing training for a while, and it's going to revolve pulling people in and telling them what needs to happen.
Is there some type of appeal of that rule change that's ongoing?
There's no appeal process that I know of. There are 2 lawsuits that have been filed, to my knowledge. 2 that I know of, there might be more. But challenging the rules, and in one case, the constitutionality of the rules and rulemaking process. And I think there's a strong case there based on the letter the Attorney General's office sent out. If you've seen that was 6 pages long and really laid out that agency's thoughts on what the state election board's been doing. But until the judge has a chance to hear the case, I couldn't venture a guess as what's going to happen.
And Joseph Kirk, we're talking to Joseph Kirk, and just tell people a little bit about your background a little bit more so they can know you're not just some guy talking about election results.
So I've been in elections since 2002. I have a degree from Computer Science at the University of Georgia. I helped implement voting machines across the state of Georgia, the state of Mississippi. I've been in my current role since 2007 in Bartow County. I'm the election supervisor here, which means I run the office day to day and do all the registration election tasks for the county under the direction of a board of elections. And then I work with a number of national organizations, teach classes on this stuff. We'll just try to be helpful and make the process better for everybody.
So did you ever think about applying for the Fulton County job?
I thought about it. But I have to say that you can't put a price on happiness, and I'm so happy to be in Bartow County. It is a great fit for me.
Absolutely. Oh, man. I appreciate you being with us today, Joseph Kirk, and we're going to talk to you again as we get closer to the election.
I look forward to it.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.